Hello horror hounds. If you're an ongoing horror franchise, where can you find yourself by the time you roll around to your seventh incarnation? If you're Friday the 13th, you start the slow seep of introducing wackiness with a psychic protagonist. If you're Hellraiser, then you've started retrofitting existing scripts to plug them through the back end into the Hellraiser universe. If you're a Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a complete restart from scratch with almost a brand new mythos with Wes Craven's New Nightmare. If you're a Leprechaun, it's a start from scratch again with a Origins. And if you're Texas Chainsaw or just plain old Saw, you start to dabble in 3D gimmickry. Where will that leave the seventh installment of the Child's Play series Cult of Chucky? What do you want out of a Child's Play movie? If you can answer that question, that will give you a good indication of how well you'll like or loathe Cult of Chucky, because this seems to be complete Marmite. Some people fucking hate it. Some people really like it. The Child's Play franchise has gone through what I view as a series of course corrections. After the first three, and Child's Play 2 and 3 were just straight up sequels trying to do the same thing over again, more or less. Bride of Chucky was needed to reinvigorate and resurrect the series, but perhaps the pendulum swung too far in that direction with Seed, and Curse was a definite course correction back to the basics, allowing Cult to fold back in elements of the, for want of a better word, wackiness and specifically dark humour into the more grounded horror that it had returned to. The short version, Cult of Chucky, has a really strong opening. It has an excellent unfolding mystery, and it has a weak ending that is its Achilles heel. One of the absolute strengths of Cult of Chucky, and the same is true of the previous movies, there are no retcons, there are no do-overs, there are no reboots. A few years have passed since the events of Curse of Chucky, and Nika, played by Fiona Dourif, is in an institution with a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, having been held responsible for Chucky's murders in the previous film. And she herself has come to believe through therapy and hypnotherapy that it was a delusion and she is responsible for those crimes. Group therapy, hypnosis, dreams and hallucinations, along with an ever-increasing number of good guy dolls thrown into the mix, will keep you guessing. Especially when we keep cutting back to Andy's B story, Andy Barclay, the kid from the first three Child's Play movies, teased in an end credit sting of Curse of Chucky is back. He's not prominent, it's Nika's movie again, but he has a B story that will make you scratch your head and go, what's the deal with what's going on in the institution? Because Andy is clearly dealing with the real Chucky. The fun with Curse of Chucky, is this a reboot, is this a sequel, what's going on, was in the revelation. And the same is true here with Cult of Chucky, so I'm not going to give the game away. What I will say is the setting and the look of this film, the white, bright clinical institution set in a lonely, snow-swept, isolated landscape, gives this a different feel from the 6 movies that have come before it. The minimalism of the clinical setting works really well. We've not seen Chucky in a place like this before, and we've not seen him amongst people who are apt to hallucinate. Don Mancini wrote 2 episodes for the 3rd season of Hannibal on television, and others have noted, and I agree, that he seems to have been affected by the aesthetic of the show, as well as I think the themes of the show. There are some scenes of murder, bloody violence that are depicted almost beautifully, like Hannibal excelled at. But thematically, you also have Chucky trying to seduce Nika, trying to turn her into a killer, someone who can join his expanding family. And thematically, that ties perfectly in with Hannibal and his relationship with Will Graham on that TV show. Make no mistake, this is probably, for, let's be honest, a low budget video on demand entry into a franchise, easily the bloodiest movie in the Child's Play series to date. There's a decapitation, there's a hospital, orderly stabbed, gutted, drilled, someone gets their head stomped to a bloody pulp in a moment of sheer catharsis. Someone else gets a drill through the back of their head and it pops out through their eyeball. There are no holds barred in this movie, but it keeps its cards close to its chest and sort of goes for it right towards the end. So you have to have patience. For me, the mystery of what was going on, which of the multiple Chuckies is the real Chucky, what's going on here where Andy is with the Chucky, that was enough to hold my attention through to the release at the end, if you will. What everyone puts a Chucky movie on to see, which is an insane doll possessed through voodoo by the spirit of a serial killer, killing lots of people. Brad Dourif, once again, is clearly having a blast as the voice of Chucky, and his daughter Fiona Dourif, who was the heroine in peril in Curse of Chucky, is an absolute force of acting nature in this. The setting of an institution, along with a strong but vulnerable female lead, reminds me a lot of the criminally underrated Ginger Snaps 2. Fiona Dourif gets to do a lot more here eventually, and it's worth it. Andy Barclay is a returning character, and as I mentioned earlier, he gets a B story. If I have one gripe, there's not enough Andy, there's not enough payoff there. It's more of a tease again. The film seemed to build up to a confrontation that won't happen until the next installment, and that was frustrating. It puts the film in an imperious position where its ultimate fate will be decided on the quality of the next installment, if there is one. And that's not a great place for a film to sit on its own. It's why I don't mind Seed of Chucky as much as many other people do. I avoided it like the plague because of the horrendous word of mouth it got, and I only came to watch it after Curse came out, and that was getting a good buzz. So it's amazing how more forgiving I was of Seed, knowing that there was a more solid, grounded one to follow it up. I can't imagine how crazy I would have got if I had gone to see Seed of Chucky when it was released and then spent all those years thinking, that's the last film, in fact, that's the last Child's Play movie. What a fucking travesty. So as this one sort of ends with the promise of the next one, a good part 8 will bolster up my opinion of this when watching them all through, because I know that there's going to be the goods later. If this is the last one, it ends on a little bit of a weak tease that currently, with this being the final Child's Play movie, I'm not so happy with. By this point, the Child's Play franchise is reminding me a lot of the Phantasm franchise, and it's got its die-hard fans. But the continuing sequence of movies keeps chugging along, keeps trying new things, loses some fans, woos some back, sees former child protagonists return as adults, but perhaps starts to lag the more it relies on to be continued endings. But after watching Cult of Chucky, I immediately wanted two things. I wanted to go back and watch all of them from the start and rewatch 7. And I also wanted an 8th Chucky right away. A strong one to make 7 stronger by proxy of being a lead-in to a nice solid part 8. However, just as there are more than one good guy doll in this movie, there's more than one opinion, and regular viewers will know that I like to try and end these videos with alternate viewpoints taken from Internet Movie Database user reviews. And the first one comes to us from Jay Ritty, who I can only assume is one of those stereotypical millennials we've been hearing a lot about, who has a 5-second attention span, because Jay Ritty writes, "Wow, this is bad, ... Okay, this one is almost an insult to anyone who enjoyed the last one. Cheap and boring in every possible way, ... I'm writing this halfway through. I'm so disgusted at this point, it can't possibly become good enough to save it. The doll looks great, and that's the best I can say. Everything is cheap and lousy, and it looks like a TV show, not a movie. Even Tilly was wasted." Whilst Victor Gonzalez, who at least watched till the end of the movie, doesn't seem to demand very much from his horror movies. I've got some sympathy with where he comes from, but it's not all about this. What did you expect? He says, it's a Chucky flick. What did you expect? Chucky to give an Oscar-winning performance? It's a horror flick, and above everything else, it's entertainment. If you're going to dive deep into the plot, the acting, the message of the film, go watch The Notebook or something. This is horror. Blood, guts, and a few laughs is all that's needed. Hats off to Don Mancini, Jennifer Tilly, Brad Dourif, Fiona Dourif. I don't care what anyone thinks. It's a good movie in my eyes.